There are patterns we don't notice until they break. Rhythms so consistent, so reliable, that they become invisible. Background noise to our conscious mind, essential to our functioning but unacknowledged. For James Mitchell, that pattern was a woman named Sarah Chen. Every morning at 8:47 a.m., he walked past her desk. First thing, before coffee, before emails, before the day officially began, he walked past her desk. He did this for 3 years, 1,095 times to be exact. Not that he was counting, not consciously. Sarah sat at the reception desk of Mitchell and Harding Architecture. She'd been there longer than James, 5 years to his 3. She was the first face clients saw, the first voice they heard, the person who made the office function seamlessly. James walked past her desk 1,095 times, said good morning approximately 800 of those times. Actually looked at her maybe 200 times. Really saw her? Never, until the day she wasn't there. The day her desk was empty, her chair unoccupied, her presence, the presence he'd never consciously acknowledged, suddenly devastatingly absent. That was the day James Mitchell realized something that should have been obvious for 3 years. Sarah Chen wasn't just the receptionist. She was the reason he came to work every morning. This is the story of how one empty desk shattered a man's carefully constructed routine and forced him to confront a truth he'd been avoiding since the day he started. He was in love with a woman he'd walked past 1,000 times without ever truly seeing. And the panic that came when she disappeared would change everything. Before we begin, you need to understand something about James Mitchell. He was a man of patterns, precision, control. Every morning, alarm at 6:15 a.m., run by 6:30, shower at 7:15, coffee, black, 2 sugars, at 7:45. In the office by 8:45, at his desk by 8:50. Between 8:45 and 8:50 he walked past Sarah's desk. This wasn't intentional, not a conscious choice, just the route from elevator to his office, past reception, past Sarah. He never stopped, never lingered, just walked, a nod, sometimes a greeting, then continued to his office, 1,095 times. Sarah Chen noticed every single one, because while James Mitchell was a man of unacknowledged patterns, Sarah Chen was a woman of careful observation. She knew he took his coffee black with 2 sugars, even though he'd never told her. She knew he adjusted his tie exactly 3 times between the elevator and his office when he was nervous about a presentation. She knew he hummed, barely audible, when a project was going well. She knew his tells, his moods, his rhythms better than he knew them himself, because she'd been watching, carefully, quietly, for 3 years. Not obsessively, not desperately, just with the gentle attention of someone who developed feelings she knew were impossible. He was a partner at the firm. She was a receptionist. He was brilliant, ambitious, destined for greatness. She was support staff, essential but invisible. The gap between them wasn't just professional. It was perception. He saw her as function, part of the office infrastructure, like the coffee machine or the printer, there when needed, unnoticed when working properly. She saw him as everything, the highlight of her morning, the reason she chose her outfits carefully, the person who made her ordinary job feel significant. For 3 years they existed in this imbalance. He, unaware. She, resigned. Until Tuesday, November 14th, the day Sarah Chen wasn't at her desk, the day James Mitchell's carefully ordered world tilted on its axis, the day everything changed. This is that story. 3 years earlier, James Mitchell walked into Mitchell and Harding Architecture as the newly promoted junior partner. 32 years old, MIT educated, portfolio of award-winning designs, reputation for brilliance and intensity, known for being demanding, exacting, and completely focused on work. He'd been at the firm for 5 years as a senior architect. The partnership was earned, deserved. His life's ambition realized. Personal life, non-existent. Relationships, distractions. Friends, colleagues who understood architecture. James Mitchell was married to his work, devoted to his craft, complete in his solitude, or so he told himself. Sarah Chen had been at the reception desk for 2 years when James became partner. She'd watched him during those first 2 years. The intense architect who rarely smiled, who worked later than anyone, who seemed to exist entirely in his own world of blueprints and visions. She found him fascinating, the way he'd pause in the lobby, staring at the building models displayed there, lost in thought. The way he'd absently thank her when she handed him messages already mentally elsewhere. The way he seemed to carry an entire universe in his head. She developed a crush, the kind that grows slowly, from observation, from small moments, from the gradual accumulation of noticed details. She never acted on it. Never would. The distance between receptionist and partner was uncrossable. She knew this, accepted it, but she couldn't stop noticing him. And James? James noticed her the way you notice any competent staff member. Peripherally, appreciatively in the abstract, never specifically. His first week as partner, he established his routine. In at 8:45. Past reception. Nod to Sarah. Office by 8:50. It became automatic, muscle memory. The path from elevator to office was programmed into his subconscious. Sarah became part of that path, a landmark. Like the water cooler or the model display. Present but not perceived. For 3 years, this continued. Sarah noticed everything about James. James noticed nothing about Sarah, until he did. But that revelation was still 3 years away. Still required the catalyst of absence. Still needed the panic of an empty desk to break through years of habitual blindness. For now, in year 1, the pattern was establishing itself. James walked past Sarah's desk every morning, and every morning Sarah's heart did something she pretended not to notice. It skipped. Just once, just for him. 1,095 heartbeats over 3 years. 1,095 moments of unreciprocated hope. 1,095 tiny griefs of being unseen. Until the day the pattern broke, until the day Sarah wasn't there, until the day James Mitchell finally, devastatingly, paid attention. Year 1 was the year of establishment. James settled into partnership. Bigger office, more responsibility, high-profile projects, the Thompson Building redesign, the Riverside Cultural Center. Work that would define his career. He was consumed by it. Happily so. Architecture was his language, his love, his life. Every morning, elevator, Sarah's desk, his office. Every evening, office, Sarah's desk, elevator. Twice a day, 260 working days a year, 520 times that first year he walked past Sarah Chen. Notable moments from year 1 that James didn't notice, but Sarah cataloged. March 17th, James came in with a black eye. Walked past reception without acknowledging it. Sarah wanted to ask. Didn't. Later heard from another associate he'd been mugged the night before, fought back, refused to take a day off. She worried about him for weeks. June 22nd, Sarah wore a new dress. Emerald green. Her favorite color. James walked past, distracted by a phone call, didn't glance up. She felt foolish for hoping he'd notice. September 8th, James's project won a regional architecture award. He stayed late celebrating with colleagues. Walked past reception at 9 p.m. Saw Sarah still there finishing reports. Said, "You should go home, it's late." First time he'd acknowledged her hours. She treasured that sentence for months. December 23rd, office holiday party. James attended for exactly 45 minutes. Professional. Obligation. Sarah watched him from across the room. He looked uncomfortable, out of place in social settings. She understood. She was the same way. Felt a kinship she'd never voice. December 24th, Sarah left a gift on James's desk. Anonymously. A book on Japanese architecture. She'd heard him mention his fascination with it. He never knew who left it. Read it, cover to cover over the holiday. 520 times he walked past. 520 times Sarah hoped for acknowledgement beyond a nod. 520 times James remained oblivious. Year 1 ended with the pattern firmly established. James focused on work, seeing Sarah as part of the office landscape. Sarah quietly building an understanding of someone who didn't know she was watching. The foundation was laid. Now it just needed time to either collapse or crystallize into something neither of them expected. Year 2 was the year Sarah stopped hoping and started accepting. She'd been at the firm for 4 years now. Knew her role, knew her place, knew that James Mitchell would never see her as anything but the receptionist. She dated briefly. A graphic designer named Marcus. Nice. Attentive, interested. It lasted 3 months. Marcus asked her once, "You're always somewhere else. Where do you go?" She couldn't answer honestly, couldn't say, "I'm thinking," about a man who doesn't know I exist. So she said, "Just tired from work." They broke up amicably. Marcus deserved someone present. She couldn't be that person, not when her mornings were defined by an 8:47 a.m. walk-by from someone who didn't see her. James, meanwhile, was thriving professionally. Made senior partner. Name on the building, Mitchell and Harding, became Mitchell, Harding and Associates. His work was being published in international architecture journals. He was at the peak of his career, completely absorbed. Still walked past Sarah's desk every morning. Still didn't see her. Notable moments from year 2, February 14th, Valentine's Day. The office was full of flower deliveries. Sarah's desk remained empty. She'd long since stopped expecting anything. James walked past, commented to his associate, waste of time and money, referring to the flowers. Sarah agreed intellectually, felt sad emotionally. April 3rd, Sarah's father died. She took a week off, her first sick days in 4 years. The temp receptionist was disorganized, inefficient. James noticed the office dysfunction, didn't connect it to Sarah's absence, just irritated that things weren't running smoothly. April 10th, Sarah returned, red-eyed, quieter than usual. James walked past, said good morning, like always. Didn't notice her grief. Didn't ask where she'd been. Sarah realized something that day. She could disappear for a week and he wouldn't notice. She was that invisible. It should have been the moment she gave up, moved on, stopped hoping. Instead, it deepened something in her. A recognition, this is what unrequited love looks like. Not dramatic, not tragic, just quiet, persistent, unreturned. July 19th, the office air conditioning broke. July heat wave. Everyone miserable. Sarah brought in a fan, set it up in the lobby. James walked past, actually stopped, and said, "Good thinking. Thank you." 3 words of direct acknowledgement. Sarah lived on those 3 words for 2 months. October 30th, Sarah celebrated her 30th birthday, alone, no party, no celebration. Just another day at a desk where the person she'd developed feelings for walked past without seeing her. She went home that night and cried. Not dramatically, just quietly, the way you cry when you're mourning something that never existed. She promised herself, after year 3, if nothing changes, I'll leave. Find a new job, stop doing this to myself. It was a reasonable decision, self-preserving, healthy. She meant it, but year 3 would change everything, not because James would suddenly see her, but because Sarah would suddenly not be there. To be seen. And James Mitchell, who'd walked past her desk 520 times in year 2, bringing the total to 1,040 walk-bys over 2 years, was about to learn something devastating. You don't know what you have until it's gone. And Sarah Chen had been there all along. Year 3 started like the previous 2. James walked past Sarah's desk every morning at 8:47 a.m. Sarah watched him go, cataloging details he didn't know she noticed. But something had shifted in Sarah. The promise she'd made herself, leave after year 3 if nothing changes, sat in her mind like a countdown timer. She had 12 months, 365 days, to either be seen or to leave. She didn't do anything dramatic, didn't suddenly dress differently or try to force his attention. That wasn't who she was. She just continued being excellent at her job while privately preparing for the end. She started taking online courses, business administration, project management, building skills that would make her marketable beyond reception. She updated her resume, quietly. During lunch breaks, she started saving more aggressively, building a financial cushion for transition. She was preparing to leave, methodically, carefully. But she didn't tell anyone, didn't give notice, just prepared. Meanwhile, James was more focused than ever. The firm was expanding, new office in Boston, major international projects. He was traveling more, working longer hours. The morning walk-by remained constant, still 8:47 a.m., still past Sarah's desk, still without really seeing her. But something was happening beneath James's conscious awareness, something he wouldn't recognize until it was too late. He was becoming dependent on that morning ritual. Not on Sarah specifically, he couldn't have articulated that, but on the routine, the consistency, the reliability of her presence. Elevator, Sarah's desk, office. It grounded him, started his day, oriented him in space and time. He didn't know this consciously, didn't think about it, but his subconscious knew. His body knew. The part of him that wasn't controlled by logic and ambition and focus knew. Sarah Chen mattered. He just hadn't figured it out yet. That realization required disruption, required absence, required panic. And in November of year 3, that's exactly what he'd get. The human brain is extraordinary at pattern recognition and terrible at acknowledging dependency. We can walk the same route 1,000 times without consciously noticing the landmarks, until one day a landmark is missing. Then suddenly, viscerally, we understand how much we relied on it. James Mitchell had walked past Sarah's desk 1,095 times over 3 years. In that time, Sarah had become part of his neurological map, a consistent element in his daily navigation. His brain expected her there the way it expected the elevator to arrive when called. Functional, background, essential but unacknowledged. What James didn't know, couldn't know without the disruption that was coming, was how much information his subconscious had been gathering. His brain had cataloged Sarah Chen in exquisite detail, the sound of her voice on the phone, professional but warm, the way she greeted clients with genuine interest, not performance, the efficiency with which she managed the chaos of a busy architectural firm, the scent of her perfume, subtle, jasmine-based, never overwhelming. His brain associated it with arrival, with beginning, with the start of productive days. The visual of her at her desk, always organized, always composed, a constant in a professional world full of variables. The rhythm of her typing, specific cadence, distinct from the other administrative staff. Background percussion to his working hours. His subconscious had absorbed all of this without his conscious participation. And more. It had noticed things James the person never acknowledged, the way her eyes would briefly meet his during morning walk by, warm, kind, seeing. The way she always had exactly the information he needed when he occasionally stopped with a question, never flustered, never uncertain. The way the office felt different on the rare days she'd taken off, less organized, less smooth, less something he couldn't name. The way his mood lifted fractionally every morning when he saw her at her desk, not consciously, just a micro shift in his nervous system, tension releasing, day officially beginning. 1,095 deposits into his neural database. 1,095 moments of unacknowledged noticing, all building toward a moment of reckoning. Because the human brain doesn't just notice patterns, it becomes addicted to them. And withdrawal from an addiction you didn't know you had, that's called panic. James Mitchell was about to learn this the hard way. November of year 3 brought changes Sarah didn't advertise. She'd been offered a position. Project coordinator at a design firm across town. Better pay, room for growth. A boss who'd actually noticed her organizational skills during a professional conference. She'd accepted, given herself 2 weeks to work up the courage to resign. She told no one, not her colleagues, certainly not James. She would give proper notice. 2 weeks, professional, clean. But first, she needed to be sure, so she took a day off. The Tuesday before she planned to resign, a test run of absence, to see if anyone would notice, if James would notice. Probably not. But she needed to know, needed confirmation that she was, in fact, invisible, that leaving would create no disruption beyond needing to hire a replacement. It was Thursday, November 9th, when she requested the day off. Her supervisor approved without question. Sarah never took days off, she'd earned it. Tuesday, November 14th would be her first absence in 8 months. The day James Mitchell's world would tilt. But before that day arrived, there were small warning. Signs, moments that, in retrospect, should have told James something was shifting. November 10th, Friday, Sarah cleaned out her desk drawers. Subtle, just organizing. James walked past, didn't notice the change. November 13th, Monday, Sarah wore her favorite outfit, the emerald dress from year 1, the one he'd never noticed, a private goodbye to hope. James walked past at 8:47 a.m., looked at his phone, didn't glance up. That evening, Sarah stayed late. Unusual for her, she typically left at 5:30 sharp, but she was creating documentation. Instructions for her replacement, making the transition easy. James worked late too, as always. Left at 9 p.m., walked past reception. Sarah was still there, typing. For the first time in 3 years, James paused. Not a full stop, just a hesitation in his stride. Something in his peripheral vision registered, different. Sarah, still here at 9 p.m. He almost asked if everything was okay. Almost. But his phone rang. A client. He took the call, kept walking. The moment passed. Sarah watched him go. Felt something she couldn't name. Relief? Disappointment? She didn't know that pause, that fraction of a second hesitation, was significant. Didn't know James's subconscious was already detecting shifts. Already sensing something wrong even though his conscious mind remained oblivious. The brain knows before we do. Patterns disrupted trigger alarms in the deeper parts of our neurology. James's brain was already preparing for Tuesday. already sensing the coming absence, already beginning to panic in ways he wouldn't understand until he walked past an empty desk and felt the full weight of 3 years of unacknowledged dependence. Sarah went home that Monday night thinking, "Tomorrow I'll be gone. And he won't even notice." James went home thinking about the Thompson building redesign, his mind entirely on work. Neither of them knew that Tuesday, November 14th would change everything. That one day of absence would accomplish what 3 years of presence couldn't. It would make James Mitchell finally, devastatingly, see Sarah Chen, not through her presence, but through her absence. Sometimes we only recognize light when we're sitting in darkness. Sometimes we only value what we had when it's gone. And sometimes, the person who's been there all along only becomes visible when they're suddenly, inexplicably not. Tuesday was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. Tuesday, November 14th started normally for James Mitchell. Alarm at 6:15 a.m., run by 6:30, 6 miles through the city, same route as always. Shower at 7:15, coffee at 7:45, black, 2 sugars consumed while reviewing project emails. Out the door at 8:30, office building by 8:43, elevator at 8:45, everything exactly as it had been for 3 years. James's mind was on the Thompson building. The design presentation was in 3 days, high stakes, high profile, the kind of project that defined careers. He was mentally reviewing the elevation drawings as the elevator climbed. Doors opened on the 7th floor, 8:47 a.m. James stepped out, turned right toward reception, began his automatic walk to his office. 3 steps in, something shifted. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a flutter in his peripheral vision, a wrongness his conscious mind couldn't immediately identify. He kept walking, but slower, slightly off rhythm. His brain was processing something his eyes hadn't fully registered. 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, past reception. And then it hit him. The desk was empty. Sarah's chair vacant, computer dark. The space where she should be, where she'd been for 3 years, 1,095 mornings, conspicuously, devastatingly empty. James stopped walking, stood there, briefcase in hand, staring at an empty desk. Felt something he couldn't name. Not worry, not yet, not consciously, just wrongness, profound wrongness, like arriving home to find the furniture rearranged. Nothing technically wrong, everything fundamentally disorienting. A colleague walked past. "Morning, James." James nodded absently. Couldn't stop staring at Sarah's empty desk. Where was she? Why did it matter? Why was his heart rate elevated? He forced himself to keep walking, to his office, sat down, opened his laptop, tried to focus on the Thompson building, couldn't. His mind kept returning to that empty desk. He told himself it was about office efficiency. Sarah was the receptionist. Her absence meant potential dysfunction. Missed calls. Disorganization. That's why it bothered him. Professional concern, nothing more. But if that was true, why did his chest feel tight? Why did the office feel wrong? Why, when he'd walked past that empty desk, had something in him fundamentally recoiled? 8:52 a.m. James pulled up the staff directory, found Sarah's extension, called, voicemail. "You've reached Sarah Chen. I'm away from my desk. Please leave a message." Her voice on the recording did something strange to him, made the tightness in his chest worse. He hung up without leaving a message, sat there, staring at nothing. 9:15 a.m. James walked back to reception, pretending to need something from the filing area nearby, really just checking if Sarah had arrived late. The desk remained empty. A temp receptionist he'd never seen before sat there now, looking overwhelmed. James approached. "Where's Sarah?" The temp looked up, flustered. "Sarah Chen?" "She took a personal day. I'm covering. Can I help you with something?" "Personal day." Sarah never took personal days. "Is she sick?" "I don't know. Just says personal day on the schedule. Do you need me to—" "No. Thank you." James walked back to his office. Sat down. Tried to work. Failed spectacularly. By 10 a.m. he'd read the same email 4 times without comprehending a word. By 11 a.m. he'd walked past reception 3 more times, checking, as if Sarah might materialize if he looked enough. By noon he'd acknowledged something he didn't want to acknowledge. Her absence mattered, more than it should, more than was professional or appropriate or logical. Sarah Chen, the receptionist he'd walked past 1,095 times without really seeing, was gone for 1 day, and James Mitchell was coming apart. He didn't understand why, didn't want to examine it too closely. Just knew that something essential was missing, that the office felt wrong without her, that he felt wrong without her. And the panic, real visceral panic, was just beginning. By 2 p.m., James had admitted something was wrong with him. He couldn't work, couldn't focus, couldn't stop thinking about Sarah's empty desk. This was irrational, unprofessional, ridiculous. She was a receptionist, out for 1 day. People took days off. It was normal, expected. So why did he feel like the ground had shifted? He tried rationalizing it. Maybe he'd relied on her more than he realized, organizationally. She managed schedules, coordinated meetings, handled logistics. Perhaps her absence created professional disruption, and that's what he was reacting to. But that didn't explain the tightness in his chest. Didn't explain why he kept staring at his phone, wanting to call her, having no professional reason to do so. Didn't explain why, at 2:30 p.m., he left the office, something he never did mid-afternoon, and walked 3 blocks to clear his head. The walk didn't help. His mind kept circling back. Sarah's desk. Empty. Wrong. He tried to remember the last time he'd actually looked at her. Really looked. Couldn't. Tried to remember their last interaction, Monday evening. He'd walked past while she was typing. She'd looked up briefly. Had there been something in her expression? Something he'd missed? He couldn't remember. Couldn't recall if he'd even made eye contact. 3 years of walking past her desk, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd actually seen her. The realization hit him standing on a street corner 3 blocks from the office. He didn't know Sarah Chen. Not really. Didn't know her. Favorite color. Her coffee order. Where she lived. If she had family, friends, dreams. For 3 years she'd been part of his daily life, and he knew nothing about her. And now she was gone. Just for a day, just a personal day. And he was falling apart. What did that mean? James stood on that street corner and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Vulnerability, fear, loss. Over a receptionist's day off. It was insane. He was insane. He went back to the office, tried again to work. 4 p.m., failed to complete a single task. 5 p.m., watched the temp receptionist pack up and leave. The desk empty again. 5:30 p.m., Sarah's normal leaving time. James sat in his office aware, hyper-aware, that she would typically be leaving now, walking to the elevator, going home to a life he knew nothing about. 6 p.m., James gave up pretending to work, packed his briefcase, walked to the elevator, past reception, past her empty desk. Felt the wrongness again, stronger now, a physical ache. He stopped, stood there, stared at her workspace, organized, minimal, professional. But there were personal touches he'd never noticed before. A small plant, succulent, well-maintained. A photo frame turned toward her seat where she could see it. He couldn't see the picture from this angle, never had. He walked behind her desk. Improper, invasive, but he didn't care. Looked at the photo. Sarah with an elderly woman. Her mother? Grandmother? They were laughing, genuinely, beautifully. James had never seen Sarah laugh like that. Had he ever seen her really smile? Probably. He just hadn't been paying attention. There was a mug. Best receptionist written in faded letters. Clearly old, clearly treasured from the way it was positioned. Carefully, not randomly. A small calendar. He flipped it. Personal notes in neat handwriting. Mom's birthday. April 3rd book club. 2nd Thursday each month salsa class. Wednesdays 7 p.m. a life. Sarah had an entire life he knew nothing about, while he'd been walking past her. Desk thinking of elevations and blueprints, she'd been here. A person. With a mother and book clubs and salsa dancing. How had he never asked? How had he never cared enough to ask? James felt something collapse inside him. 3 years. 1,095 walk-bys. And he'd never once thought to ask about her. Never once wondered who she was beyond her function. The shame was devastating. But beneath the shame was something more terrifying need. He needed to see her, to talk to her, to ask all the questions he should have asked 3 years ago. He needed her to come back, not for professional reasons, for reasons he couldn't name but couldn't deny. James left the office at 6:30 p.m., went home to his empty apartment, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about Sarah's empty desk, about 3 years of blindness, about 1 day of absence that had revealed something he couldn't unknow. Sarah Chen mattered, had always mattered. He just hadn't let himself see it. And tomorrow, if she came back tomorrow, he'd have to figure out what to do with that knowledge. Or if she didn't come back tomorrow, the thought made his chest constrict. James Mitchell, 35 years old, senior partner, award-winning architect, emotionally self-sufficient and professionally focused, spent Tuesday night panicking over a receptionist's day off. and wondering when, exactly, she'd become so essential to his existence that one day without her felt like the ground disappearing beneath his feet. The answer was simple, really. It had happened gradually, over 1,095 mornings, one walk-by at a time. She'd become part of him without his permission or awareness. And now that he finally noticed, he had no idea what to do about it, except wait for Wednesday morning. And hope, desperately, irrationally hope, that her desk wouldn't be empty again. James Mitchell didn't sleep Tuesday night. Not for lack of trying. He went to bed at his usual 11 p.m., lay there, stared at the ceiling. His mind wouldn't quiet. Sarah's empty desk played on repeat. The tightness in his chest, still there. Constant, uncomfortable. At 1 a.m. he gave up. Got up, made coffee. Sat at his kitchen island with his laptop, pretending he'd work on the Thompson building. Instead, found himself doing something he'd never done before, looking up Sarah Chen. LinkedIn first, professional, appropriate. Her profile was modest, 5 years at Mitchell and Harding. Before that, 2 years at a marketing firm, degree in communications from Boston University, skills listed, office management, scheduling, client relations, project coordination, recommendations from former colleagues, detail-oriented, professional, makes everything run smoothly, function. Everyone saw her function, just like he had. James scrolled through her posts, sparse, professional, occasional article shares about architecture. She followed the industry, had opinions on design trends. Had he ever asked her opinion on a design? Never. He moved to other social media, found her Instagram, set to public. Photos told a story: Sarah hiking, smiling at a mountain summit, Sarah at an art gallery, thoughtful expressions studying a painting. Sarah with friends, genuine laughter, that same laugh from the photo on her desk. Sarah's book club, 5 women holding wine glasses holding up their monthly selection. Sarah mid-salsa dance, arms extended, joy captured mid-movement. A whole life, a whole person, someone interesting, active, engaged with the world. And James had reduced her to a desk, a function, a walk-by. The shame intensified, but so did something else. Fascination. Who was this woman? This person who'd been 15 feet from his office for 3 years? He wanted to know, needed to know. At 2 a.m., James did something he recognized as crossing a line but couldn't stop himself. He drafted an email. Sarah, I hope everything is okay. You weren't in the office today. I wanted to check that you're all right. James, he stared at it for 20 minutes. Deleted it. Too personal, inappropriate. She was staff. He was a partner. This crossed boundaries. Tried again, Sarah. The office felt different without you today. I realized I've never properly thanked you for everything you do. You make this firm run smoothly. I hope you're well. James, still wrong. Still too much. What was he trying to say? What was appropriate to say? Nothing. That was the answer. Nothing was appropriate because the thing he wanted to say couldn't be said. Sarah, I walked past your desk 1,095 times and never really saw you. And now that you're gone for 1 day, I can't function and I don't understand what's happening to me, but I need you to come back. You can't send that email. You can't admit that after 3 years of indifference, 1 day of absence has undone you. James closed his laptop, sat in his dark kitchen, tried to understand what was happening to him. The conclusion he kept arriving at, the one he didn't want to accept, was simple. He had feelings for Sarah Chen, not professional appreciation, not abstract acknowledgement of competence, real feelings, the kind that make 1 day of absence feel like loss, the kind that make you research someone's life at 2 a.m., the kind that make panic bloom when they're not where they're supposed to be. How long had he had these feelings? He didn't know. Maybe they'd developed gradually, imperceptibly, his subconscious cataloging her while his conscious mind remained focused on work. Maybe they'd always been there, suppressed beneath his devotion to architecture and success. Or maybe they'd crystallized in her absence. The way you don't appreciate health until you're sick, don't value light until you're in darkness. Maybe absence doesn't just make the heart grow fonder, maybe it makes the heart finally pay attention. James sat in his kitchen until sunrise, trying to decide what to do with this revelation. Option 1, nothing. Ignore it. She was staff. He was a partner. Acting on this would be inappropriate, unprofessional, potentially career-damaging for both of them. Option 2, transfer to the Boston office. remove himself from temptation. Let Sarah continue her life without the complication of his sudden awareness. Option 3, actually talk to her, like a human being. Ask about her life, her interests. Build a friendship first. See if what he was feeling was real or just panic over disrupted routine. Option 4, tell her, directly, risk everything. I've walked past your desk 1,000 times and never saw you, and now I can't stop seeing you. Each option terrified him in different ways. At 6:15 a.m., his alarm went off. Wednesday morning. Time to find out if Sarah would be back. Time to see if he could function when she was there, now that he'd spent an entire day dysfunctional in her absence. Time to decide if he was brave enough to do something about these feelings or coward enough to bury them. James Mitchell got ready for work with his hands shaking. Not from lack of sleep, from fear. Fear that she'd be there and he wouldn't know what to say. Fear that she wouldn't be there and the panic would return. Fear that 3 years of walking past someone without seeing them had cost him something irreplaceable. Fear that maybe, just maybe, he'd fallen in love without realizing it, and now that he knew, everything would change, or everything would end. 8:45 a.m. approached. Wednesday. The day James Mitchell would either begin something new or confirm he'd lost something he never knew he had. The elevator doors were about to open. Sarah's desk was either occupied or empty, and James's entire future hung on which one it would be. Wednesday, November 15th. James arrived at the office building at 8:43 a.m. 2 minutes early, unusual. His routine was precise. Arrive at 8:43, elevator at 8:45, past reception at 8:47. But today he was early because he couldn't wait. Needed to know. Was she there? He stood in the lobby, watching the clock, watching other employees arrive and head to elevators. Normal Wednesday morning for everyone else. For James, the most important morning of his life. 8:45 a.m. He got in the elevator, pressed 7. His heart was racing, actually racing, like he was about to give a presentation to the most important client of his career. Except this was just walking past a receptionist's desk, just seeing if Sarah Chen had returned. Except it wasn't just anything anymore. The elevator climbed. James tried to control his breathing. What would he say if she was there? Good morning, like always? Act like Tuesday hadn't happened? Like he hadn't spent 16 hours in existential crisis over her absence? Pretend his hands weren't shaking right now? What if she wasn't there? What if she'd taken multiple days off? What if, and this thought made his chest constrict, what if she wasn't coming back at all? What if Tuesday had been her notice day, her goodbye? The elevator dinged. 7th floor. Doors opened. James stepped out, turned right, began walking toward reception, and there she was, Sarah Chen, at her desk. Same as always. Computer on, phone headset positioned, professional, composed, present. She was there. The relief that flooded through James was physical, overwhelming. His knees actually weakened. She was there. But then something else hit him. Now what? Now that he'd seen her, really seen her, how was he supposed to walk past like nothing had changed? Sarah looked up, made eye contact, smiled, professional, polite. The same smile she'd probably given him 1,000 times before. Good morning, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell. Formal, distant, professional. The way it had always been. Because from her perspective nothing had changed. She'd taken a day off. Now she was back. Business as usual. She had no idea her absence had detonated something in him. No idea he'd spent Tuesday falling apart. No idea he'd looked up her Instagram at 2 a.m. like a stalker. No idea that right now, looking at her, he was fighting the urge to say something completely inappropriate like, "Where were you?" Or "Don't ever not be here again," or "I missed you." You can't say those things to your receptionist. You can't admit that level of dependence. James opened his mouth. Good morning, Sarah. Her name, he'd used her name. He always said good morning if he said anything at all. Never added her name. Sarah's smile shifted, minutely, from professional to slightly puzzled. How are you? James heard himself say. Now she looked definitely puzzled. In 3 years he'd never asked how she was. I'm fine, thank you. How are you? Good, good. He was standing in front of her desk. Just standing there. Not continuing to his office. Breaking 3 years of pattern. Other employees were arriving, walking around him, noticing. Sarah was looking at him with concern now. Is everything okay? Did you need something? Yes, no, everything, nothing. Just wanted to make sure you were... That yesterday, everything was okay? Why was he asking that? Why couldn't he just keep walking? Yesterday was fine, just a personal day. Thank you for asking. Polite, professional, no elaboration. Of course she wouldn't elaborate. He'd never given her reason to share personal information, had actively discouraged personal connection through 3 years of professional distance. Good. That's good. I'm glad you're back. The words came out before he could stop them. I'm glad you're back. Sarah's expression shifted again. Surprise, confusion, maybe something else. Thank you, she said carefully. I'm glad to be back. It came out as a question. An awkward silence hung between them. James knew he should leave, walk to his office, end this weird interaction. But he couldn't move, couldn't stop looking at her. For 3 years he'd walked past without really looking. Now he couldn't look away. He was noticing everything. The way she'd swept her hair back, one small strand escaping behind her ear. The way her eyes were actually gray-green, not brown like he'd vaguely assumed. The way she was wearing a navy blue cardigan over a white blouse. Professional, but with a silver necklace. Small, delicate, personal. The way she was looking at him with increasing concern, probably wondering if he'd had some kind of breakdown. Mr. Mitchell, are you sure everything's okay? The use of Mr. Mitchell when he'd called her Sarah created distance, reminded him of their professional relationship, the hierarchy. He was her boss, essentially, senior partner. She was staff. This, whatever this was, couldn't happen. Everything's fine. Sorry. Long day yesterday. I should get to my office. Of course. Your 9:30 is already in conference room B. I sent you the briefing materials. Of course she had. She was efficient, professional, good at her job. The job he'd never properly valued until she wasn't there to do it. Thank you, Sarah. Her name again. He couldn't seem to stop using it. She nodded, still looking concerned. James forced himself to walk away, to his office. Finally, closed the door. Stood there, briefcase still in hand, heart still racing. What had just happened? He'd completely broken routine, acted bizarre, probably made her uncomfortable. All because he couldn't walk past her desk like normal. Couldn't pretend Tuesday hadn't happened. Couldn't pretend he hadn't spent 16 hours realizing she mattered. James sat at his desk, opened his laptop, stared at the Thompson building designs without seeing them, because all he could see was Sarah's face, confused, concerned, beautiful. Had she always been beautiful? Or was he just noticing now? Probably the latter. Probably he'd been blind for 3 years and now, inconveniently, inappropriately, could suddenly see. This was a problem, a significant problem. James Mitchell had feelings for his receptionist. And after that awkward interaction, she probably thought he was losing his mind. Which, fair assessment, he was. The rest of Wednesday was torture. James couldn't focus, couldn't work, couldn't stop thinking about Sarah 15 feet away at reception. Every time someone walked past his office, he looked up, hoping it was her, disappointed when it wasn't. At 10 a.m., she brought him coffee. She'd never done that before. She knocked, entered, set down a mug on his desk. You seemed tired this morning. Thought you might need this. Coffee, black, 2 sugars. Exactly how he liked it. How did she know that? Thank you. You didn't have to. It's no problem. You look exhausted. Late night? She was being kind, checking on him after his weird behavior that morning. Something like that. Thank you for the coffee. She smiled, started to leave. Sarah. She turned back. Yes? He didn't know what he was going to say. Didn't have a plan. Just couldn't let her leave without something. How was your day off? Did you do anything interesting? Small talk. Normal human interaction. The kind he'd avoided for 3 years. Sarah looked surprised, then cautious. It was fine. Just personal errands. Nothing exciting. Not an invitation to probe further. Professional boundary established. James should have left it there. You never take days off. First one in 8 months. Must have been important. Now she looked uncomfortable. Just needed a day, that's all. Message received, not your business. And it wasn't. He had no right to ask. But he wanted to know. Wanted to know everything about her. Of course. Well, I'm glad you're back. There it was again, that phrase. You said that this morning, Sarah said quietly. Did I? Yes. Are you sure everything's okay, Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Mitchell. The formality was deliberate. Distance, it's fine. And Sarah? You can call me James. Her eyebrows rose. In 3 years he'd never invited first-name basis. I usually keep things professional with senior partners. I know. But we've worked together 3 years. Seems excessive to be so formal. If you prefer, she said carefully. Is there anything else you need? Yes, everything. Your entire story, your thoughts, your time. No. Thank you for the coffee. She left. James stared at the closed door. That had gone poorly. He'd made her uncomfortable, pushed boundaries she'd clearly established for good reason. He needed to stop this, needed to get himself under control. But every time he tried to focus on work, his mind drifted back to reception, to Sarah, to the fact that she was there, 15 feet away, and he couldn't go talk to her without making everything worse. Lunchtime came. James usually ate at his desk, worked through lunch. Today, at 12:30, he found himself walking to reception. Sarah was at her desk, eating a salad, reading something on her phone. Taking a lunch break? Brilliant opening line, James. Really smooth. She looked up, startled. Oh, yes. Just 30 minutes. I'll be back at the desk if you need... No, that's not. I wasn't checking on you, Are you eating alone? Sarah set down her fork. Usually yes. Why? Would you like company? The words hung there. Sarah stared at him. James realized how that sounded, how inappropriate that was. I mean, I usually eat alone too. Thought maybe we could talk, get to know each other better, professionally, as colleagues. He was making this worse. Sarah's expression was unreadable. That's very kind, Mr. Mitchell. James. But I actually have plans, meeting a friend in 15 minutes. Rain check? She was lying. He didn't know how he knew, but he knew. She was deflecting, creating distance, protecting boundaries he'd violated by asking. Of course. Another time, sure. She didn't mean it. James walked away, back to his office. Felt like an idiot. What was he doing? You can't just suddenly start pursuing your receptionist after 3 years of ignoring her. You can't expect her to welcome the attention. For all Sarah knew, he was being inappropriate, using his position to pressure her into personal interaction. She was protecting herself. Smart woman. Which made him feel worse, because his intentions weren't predatory, weren't about power. They were about... what exactly? Guilt? Making up for 3 years of not seeing her? No. It was more than that. He wanted to know her. Genuinely wanted to know who Sarah Chen was. But he'd lost the right to ask 3 years ago when he'd established their relationship as purely transactional. You don't get to suddenly change the terms because you had an epiphany. James spent the afternoon wrestling with this, trying to accept that what he felt didn't matter, that Sarah deserved better than someone who only noticed her when she was gone, that the professional thing, the right thing, was to go back to routine. Stop making her uncomfortable. Let her do her job in peace. At 5:30, James watched through his office window as Sarah packed up her desk, watched her put on her coat, watched her walk to the elevator, wanted to follow her, to apologize for his weirdness, to explain. Stayed in his office instead. Let her leave. Tried to convince himself that was the right choice. Wednesday ended with James no closer to knowing what to do. Just knowing he couldn't go back to walking past her desk without seeing her. Couldn't unknow what he'd realized in her absence. Couldn't stop the feelings that had apparently been building for 3 years without his awareness. The question was, what did he do with those feelings, especially when the object of them clearly wanted professional distance, especially when pursuing them could cost both of them their jobs, especially when he had no evidence she felt anything remotely similar. James went home Wednesday night more confused than he'd been Tuesday. At least Tuesday he'd just been panicking. Now he was panicking and aware that his feelings were one-sided, inappropriate, and potentially career-destroying. Progress. Sort of. Thursday would bring more complications, because Sarah Chen had noticed something on Wednesday. Had noticed James Mitchell acting strange. And Sarah, who'd spent 3 years observing him carefully, knew when something was off. She just didn't know what. Not yet. But she was about to find out. Sarah Chen had taken Tuesday off for a reason. Not errands, not personal business, an interview. With the design firm across town. The project coordinator position. Better pay. Room for advancement. An opportunity to use her organizational skills in meaningful ways. The interview had gone well. They'd offered her the job on the spot. She'd asked for time to think about it. Had until Friday to accept or decline. Tuesday night, Sarah had been ready to accept. Ready to leave Mitchell and Harding. Ready to stop torturing herself with proximity to a man who didn't see her. 3 years was enough. She'd given James Mitchell 1,095 opportunities to notice her. He hadn't taken a single one. Time to move on. But then Wednesday happened. James acting strange, using her first name, asking how she was, saying he was glad she was back, standing at her desk, staring, looking at her like he was seeing something new. The coffee delivery, the lunch invitation, the continued weirdness. Something had shifted. Sarah didn't know what, didn't trust it, but couldn't ignore it. Wednesday night, instead of calling the design firm to accept, Sarah had called her best friend Maya. Maya had listened to the whole story, then laughed. "Girl, he noticed you were gone." "So what?" "Probably just realized how much work I do and panicked about office efficiency." "Did he ask about your work? About files or schedules or logistics?" "No. He asked how I was, what I did on my day off, if I wanted to have lunch." "And you think that's about work efficiency?" "What else would it be?" "Sarah, come on. You're smarter than this. He's never looked at me twice in 3 years. One day I'm gone and suddenly he's acting weird. That's not romantic interest. That's, I don't know, guilt, boredom, something else. Or maybe he's finally noticed you. Maybe absence made the heart realize what it's been ignoring. That's not how it works. You don't just suddenly develop feelings. You don't. But feelings you've been suppressing? Those can suddenly surface when disrupted. Maybe he's been attracted to you all along and didn't let himself acknowledge it. That's wishful thinking. Maybe. Or maybe you're protecting yourself from hope because hope has hurt you before. Look, I'm not saying marry the guy. I'm saying pay attention. See if the weirdness continues. Give him a chance to explain himself. Then decide about the new job. Sarah had hung up unconvinced, but Maya's words stayed with her. Thursday morning, Sarah arrived at work with heightened awareness. She'd spent 3 years watching James Mitchell. Now she was watching for something different, not patterns, changes in patterns. 8:47 a.m. James stepped off the elevator, made eye contact immediately, not the usual glance and nod, actual eye contact. "Good morning, Sarah," first name, again. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell." She kept it formal deliberately, testing. "James," he corrected gently. "Please." "James," she conceded. He stood there, that same strange hesitation from Wednesday, like he wanted to say something but didn't know what. "Did you need something?" Sarah prompted. "No. Yes. I wanted to apologize for yesterday, the lunch invitation. I realized it might have seemed inappropriate. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. An apology." James Mitchell, who never apologized for anything, was apologizing to her. "It's fine. I wasn't uncomfortable." That was partly a lie. She had been uncomfortable. Not threatened, just confused. "Good. I've been thinking. We've worked together 3 years and I don't really know you. That seems wrong. I'd like to change that. Appropriately. Professionally. If you're open to it." Sarah studied him. He looked sincere, also nervous. James Mitchell, the most confident person she knew, looked nervous talking to her. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "What? Why now?" 3 years. Why suddenly interested in knowing me now? Direct question, maybe too direct, but she needed to understand. James looked uncomfortable. "That's a fair question. I don't have a good answer, except Tuesday made me realize I've been walking past your desk without really seeing you. That's not okay. You deserve better than that." "Everyone does." Guilt, then, not attraction. Maya had been wrong. Sarah felt something deflate inside her. "You don't need to feel guilty. We have a professional relationship." "That's appropriate. I don't expect—" "It's not just guilt," James interrupted. I can't explain it without sounding insane. But Tuesday, when you weren't here, I realized something. And now I can't unrealize it. So I'm trying, poorly apparently, to act on that realization. But I understand if you'd rather keep things professional and distant. I won't push." What realization? What had he realized? Sarah wanted to ask. Didn't. Because maybe she didn't want to know. Maybe knowing would make everything more complicated. Maybe keeping the distance was safer. "I appreciate that," she said carefully. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, no pressure. Really." He smiled. Awkward, genuine. Then walked to his office. Sarah sat at her desk, mind racing. What had just happened? What had James realized on Tuesday? And why did that conversation feel more significant than 3 years of interactions combined? The design firm offer sat in her email, unanswered. She was supposed to decide by Friday, but now she wasn't sure. Because something was happening, something she didn't understand. And walking away before understanding felt premature. Also terrifying. Because what if she stayed and this was nothing? What if James's weirdness faded and they went back to the old dynamic? Or worse, what if she stayed and it was something, but something that couldn't go anywhere because of their professional relationship? Sarah had until Friday to decide about the job. She had until then to figure out what was happening with James Mitchell, and whether it was worth the risk of staying to find out. Thursday continued with careful observation. Sarah watched James like she'd done for 3 years, but differently now. Before, she'd watched because she had feelings, cataloged his patterns because she cared, even though it was hopeless. Now she watched because something had changed, and she needed to understand what. 10 a.m., James walked past reception. Slowed down. Looked like he wanted to stop. Didn't. Kept walking. Glanced back once. Sarah pretended not to notice. 11:30 a.m., James called her extension. "Sarah, do you have a minute?" "Of course. What do you need? Could you come to my office?" Unusual. If he needed something, he usually just asked over the phone or walked out to her desk. Sarah went to his office, knocked, entered. James was standing by his window, turned when she entered. "Close the door, please." Her heart rate elevated. Was this about to get inappropriate? Was she about to need to shut down unwanted attention? She closed the door, stayed near it, escape route clear. James noticed her positioning, looked pained. "I'm not going to do anything inappropriate, I promise. I just need to ask you something private." "Okay. Tuesday, your day off. You took it because you were unhappy here?" Direct, unexpected. Sarah's mind raced. How did he know? "What makes you think that?" "I don't know. Intuition. You've never taken a personal day in 8 months. It seemed significant. And I noticed you've been cleaning out your desk. Small things, organizing. The way people do when they're preparing to leave." He'd noticed that? The minor organizing she'd done last week? "I had an interview," Sarah admitted. No point lying if he'd already figured it out. James's face went pale. "You're leaving." "I haven't decided." "When do you have to decide?" "Tomorrow." "Tomorrow," he repeated, like the word was a death sentence. Silence. James sat down heavily in his chair, looked at his hands. "Can I ask you not to?" Sarah's breath caught. "What?" "Can I ask you not to leave? Is that inappropriate?" "I think it might be. I don't care. Don't leave, Sarah." "Why?" The word came out shakier than she intended. "Because," he looked up, met her eyes. "Because Tuesday, when you weren't here, I fell apart. I couldn't work, couldn't focus, couldn't stop panicking about where you were and if you were okay and if you were coming back. And I realized something I should have realized 3 years ago. Which is? That you're not just the receptionist. You're essential to this place, to me. I've walked past your desk 1,000 times without really seeing you, and that's inexcusable. But I see you now. And the thought of you not being here, of walking past an empty desk permanently, is unbearable." Sarah's heart was pounding. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I have feelings for you. Feelings that are probably inappropriate given our professional relationship. Feelings I didn't know I had until you weren't here. Feelings I don't know what to do with, except ask, beg, you not to leave." The room spun. James Mitchell just said he had feelings for her. After 3 years of nothing. After she'd given up. After she'd accepted a job offer to escape this exact situation. She couldn't form words. "You have feelings for me?" "Yes. I know that's not fair. I know I have no right after 3 years of being oblivious, but yes, I have feelings for you. And I don't know what to do about them except be honest. When did this happen? How did this happen? I don't know. Maybe it's been happening, gradually, all along, and I didn't let myself notice. Maybe it crystallized on Tuesday. I can't give you a timeline. I just know. It's true. And I know that you're about to leave, and I can't let you go without telling you." Sarah sat down in the chair across from his desk, legs shaky. "This is a lot. I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have dumped this on you. You came to my office for what you thought was a work question, and I ambushed you with a confession. That's not fair. No, it's not. I'm sorry." They sat in silence. Sarah's mind was chaos. 3 years she'd wanted this, wanted James to see her, notice her, want her. Now he was saying all the right words, and she didn't know if she believed them. "James, I need to understand something. anything. Is this about me, or is this about you not wanting to lose convenient, competent staff? He flinched. That's fair, but it's about you. Sarah, I spent Tuesday looking at your Instagram, reading about your life, realizing you're this whole person I never bothered to know. I saw you dancing and hiking and laughing with friends, and I thought, who is she? And I wanted to know. Not because you do good work, because you're fascinating and I've been too blind to see it. You looked at my Instagram at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep because I was panicking about you. Yes, creepy, I know. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. A chance to get to know you. Permission to try. I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss, essentially. I know there are power dynamics and professional issues. But Sarah, I can't let you walk away without trying. Without at least asking if there's any possibility you might feel something too. The question hung between them. Did she feel something too? Yes. Of course yes. 3 years of yes. But could she trust this? Could she trust that James's sudden realization wasn't just panic, that it would last beyond the crisis of her potential departure? I need time to think, Sarah said finally. How much time? I have until tomorrow to accept or decline the other job. So, until tomorrow. That's not much time. No. But it's what I have. Can you give me that? 1 day to process this? Yes. Of course, Sarah. Yes? For what it's worth, I mean this. All of it. This isn't panic or ego or convenience. This is me finally paying attention, finally seeing what was in front of me all along. I know that's not romantic. I know you deserve someone who saw you immediately. But I'm asking anyway, for a chance. Just a chance. Sarah stood, walked to the door, turned back. I'll let you know tomorrow. She left his office, went back to reception, sat down, tried to appear normal while her entire world had just shifted. James Mitchell had feelings for her, had asked her not to leave, had given her the choice. Tomorrow she had to decide. Stay and see if this was real, or leave and protect herself from potential heartbreak. Neither option felt safe. Both options terrified her. But at least now, finally, after 3 years, she had options. James had seen her. The question was, what did she want to do with that? Thursday night, Sarah sat in her apartment with 2 paths laid out before her. Path 1, accept the design firm job, leave Mitchell and Harding. Start fresh somewhere James Mitchell wouldn't be walking past her desk every morning. Safe, sensible, self-preserving. Path 2, stay. Give James a chance. See if his feelings were real or just panic over disrupted routine. Risky, complicated, potentially devastating. Sarah called Maya. He told me he has feelings for me. Maya screamed. Literally screamed loud enough that Sarah had to pull the phone away from her ear. I told you, he noticed. Maya, calm down. This is serious. This is amazing. What did you say? I said I need time to think. Think about what? The man finally pulled his head out of his ass and realized, you're incredible. Why do you need to think? Because it's been 3 years, Maya. 3 years of him not seeing me. And one day, I'm gone and suddenly he has feelings. That doesn't seem suspicious to you. It seems like textbook, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Which is cliché but real. Sarah, you've wanted this for years. I've wanted him to see me. Yes. But not like this. Not out of panic. Not because he thought he was losing me. Why does the catalyst matter if the feelings are real? Because what happens when the panic fades? When I'm back to being background? When the routine reestablishes and I'm invisible again? Did he seem like he was panicking? Or did he seem genuine? Sarah thought about James's face in his office, the vulnerability, the nervousness, the way he'd said, I see you now, like it was a revelation and an apology combined. Genuine, she admitted quietly. Then why are you hesitating? Because I'm scared. 3 years I've built up this armor, this acceptance that James Mitchell would never see me as anything but staff. And now that armor is cracking and it's terrifying. What if I let him in and he's not what I thought? What if the reality doesn't match the 3 years of hoping? Or what if it's better? What if knowing you have a chance is better than hoping? What if I get hurt, then you get hurt? But, Sarah, you've been hurting for 3 years. At least this way, you'd be hurting because you tried, not because you never knew. The words hit hard. Sarah had been hurting, quietly, for 3 years. Loving someone from a distance was its own kind of pain. Was risking proximity worse than maintaining safe distance? I don't know what to do, Sarah said. Yes, you do. You're just scared to do it. Stay, give him a chance, see if 3 years of hoping translates into something real. If it doesn't work, you can leave then. But leaving now before finding out? You'll regret that forever. You think so? I know so. Some risks are worth taking. This is one of them. After the call, Sarah sat with her decision. The design firm job was safe, guaranteed. Pay increase, new environment. No complicated history. Staying meant risk. Meant confronting 3 years of unreciprocated feelings. Meant trusting James's sudden realization. Meant navigating professional complications. But it also meant possibility. The possibility that James Mitchell, who'd walked past her desk 1,095 times, might actually see her now, might want to know her, might feel what she'd been feeling for 3 years. Sarah looked at the job offer email. Her cursor hovered over accept, then moved to decline. She was going to stay. Not because of James's feelings, not entirely, but because she needed to know, needed to find out if 3 years of hoping had been wasted or had been building towards something real. She'd spent 3 years as the invisible woman. Maybe it was time to be seen. Sarah typed her decline email to the design firm, then stopped. She wouldn't send it tonight. Would wait until after talking to James tomorrow. Would give herself one more night to be certain. But in her heart she already knew. She was staying, and tomorrow she'd tell James Mitchell that he had his chance. One chance to prove his feelings were real. One chance to turn 3 years of walking past her desk into actually seeing her. One chance to build something from the ruins of routine. Sarah went to bed Thursday night with her decision made. Terrified, hopeful, ready to find out if love that started in absence could grow in presence. Ready to discover if James Mitchell's panic would translate into genuine partnership. Ready to risk everything for the possibility of finally being seen by the person she'd been watching for 3 years. Tomorrow would change everything. Again. But this time, Sarah Chen would be making the choice, not responding to James's panic, actively choosing what she wanted. And what she wanted, terrifying as it was to admit, was him. Always had been. Now she just needed him to prove he wanted her too. Not as a function, not as a convenience, but as a person, as Sarah. Tomorrow she'd find out if he could do that. Tomorrow the walking would stop, and the seeing would begin. Friday, November 17th. The day Sarah Chen would decide the next chapter of her life. She arrived at work at 8:30 a.m., earlier than usual. Wanted to be settled before James arrived. Needed to be composed, grounded, ready. The office was quiet. Early morning stillness before the day's chaos began. Sarah sat at her desk, looked at the space that had been her life for 5 years. This desk, this view of the elevator, this first-person perspective on James Mitchell's daily arrivals. If she stayed, everything would change. The dynamic would shift. The professional distance would collapse. She'd go from being the woman James walked past to being someone he actively engaged with. Terrifying, exhilarating. Sarah pulled up the design firm's email. Read it one more time. Good offer. Great opportunity. Safe choice. Then looked at her desk, at the small plant, the photo of her and her mother, the best receptionist mug. 3 years of life here, 5 years total. Worth abandoning because it got complicated, or worth fighting for because it might become something real. 8:45 a.m. The elevator dinged. Sarah looked up. James Mitchell stepped out, made immediate eye contact. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept. Circles under his eyes, tie slightly crooked. Unheard of for James. He'd been as tormented by this decision as she had. That meant something. James walked toward her desk. Slowly, like a man approaching his execution, stopped in front of her. "Good morning," he said quietly. "Good morning." Silence, heavy, loaded with yesterday's confession and today's impending decision. "Did you decide?" James asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, and?" Sarah stood, needed to be on equal footing for this. "I'm staying." James's entire body sagged with relief, like he'd been holding his breath for 24 hours and could finally exhale. "You're staying. I'm staying." "But James, there are conditions. Anything, whatever you need. First, this doesn't happen at work. Whatever we're doing, we keep it separate from professional responsibilities. I won't be treated differently because we're whatever we are." Agreed. "Second, we take this slow. 3 years of you not seeing me doesn't get erased overnight. I need time. I need you to prove this isn't just panic or ego. I understand. How slow? I don't know yet. But you have to be okay with uncertainty. With me not immediately trusting this, I can do that. What else? Third, if this doesn't work, if we try and it falls apart, I need your word that you will give me a good reference and won't make my continued employment here impossible. I need an exit strategy that doesn't destroy my career. You have my word. But Sarah, I'm going to make sure we don't need an exit strategy. That's condition 4. No promises you can't keep. I've been promised things before. Words are easy. Actions matter. Show me, don't tell me. James nodded, serious, understanding the weight of what she was asking. I can do that. Show, not tell. Anything else? Yes, one more thing. Name it. I need you to understand that I've had feelings for you for a long time. This isn't new for me. This isn't a surprise revelation. I've been watching you, caring about you, hoping you'd notice me for 3 years. So when you say you have feelings, when you ask me to give this a chance, you need to know, I'm not entering this cautiously because I'm unsure. I'm entering cautiously because I'm trying to protect a heart that's already invested. Don't break it, please. The vulnerability in her voice cracked something in James's expression. You've had feelings for me for 3 years? Yes. And I never saw it? No. Sarah, don't apologize. Not right now. Just promise you'll do better going forward. I promise. I swear to you, Sarah, I will spend every day proving I see you. Really see you. Okay. So what do we do now? James smiled. First genuine smile she'd seen from him all week. Now I'd really like to take you to dinner. Tonight. If you're free. Not as boss and employee. As James and Sarah. 2 people getting to know each other. Finally, dinner sounds good. Yeah. But James, yes? You're taking me somewhere nice. 3 years of walking past my desk without really seeing me? You owe me a very nice dinner. James laughed. Actually laughed. She'd never heard him laugh before. The nicest restaurant in the city. I promise. See? Already breaking the no promises rule. That's a promise I can keep. They stood there, on opposite sides of her desk, smiling at each other like idiots. Other employees were arriving. Morning rush beginning. Normal Friday chaos starting. I should let you get to work, Sarah said. I should actually work for once instead of being completely useless like I've been all week. You've been useless? Catastrophically useless. Tuesday through Thursday were professional write-offs. I got nothing done because I couldn't stop panicking about you. I don't know if I should be flattered or concerned. Both. Definitely both. James started toward his office, stopped, turned back. Sarah? Yes. Thank you for staying, for giving me a chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll earn it. I promise, wait, no, not promise, I'll show you, through actions, that I deserve this chance. Good recovery, I'm learning. He went to his office. Sarah sat back down at her desk, opened her email, typed her official decline to the design firm. Thank you for the generous offer. After careful consideration, I've decided to remain in my current position. I appreciate the opportunity and wish you all the best in finding the right candidate. Sent, done, decision made. Sarah Chen was staying at Mitchell and Harding, was giving James Mitchell a chance to prove his sudden awareness was real, was risking her carefully protected heart on the possibility that 3 years of hoping might finally, actually pay off. Terrifying? Absolutely. But also, exciting. Because for the first time in 3 years, James Mitchell was going to walk past her desk not as routine, not as background, but as someone actively choosing to see her. And that made all the risk worthwhile. The morning continued. Work happened. Calls and emails and the usual office chaos. But everything felt different, because James Mitchell kept walking past reception, not just at 8:47 a.m., multiple times. 10:30 a.m., stopped, coffee break. Can I bring you anything? Noon, I'm getting lunch. Want me to grab you something? 3 p.m., stopped again, just smiled, said nothing. Kept walking, small gestures, but consistent, showing, not telling, proving he was paying attention now. Sarah noticed every single one, just like she'd noticed every walk-by for 3 years. But this time, she was being noticed back, and that changed everything. Friday ended with James and Sarah leaving together, heading to dinner, first actual date after 3 years of proximity. As they walked to the elevator together, Sarah thought about the design firm offer, the safe choice she'd declined, the risk she'd accepted instead. Sometimes the scariest choice is the right one. Sometimes you have to risk heartbreak for the possibility of happiness. Sometimes the person who walked past you 1,000 times just needed the disruption of your absence to finally see you. Sarah Chen had been invisible for 3 years. Tonight, on a first date with a man who'd been blind to her until she disappeared, she would finally be seen. Really seen. And whatever happened next, success or failure, joy or heartbreak, at least she'd know. At least she'd tried. At least she'd chosen possibility over protection. The elevator doors closed on James and Sarah standing together. No longer boss and receptionist. Just two people about to discover if 3 years of walking past could transform into walking together. The answer wouldn't come tonight or tomorrow, but eventually, over time, through actions not words, through showing not telling, through consistent effort and genuine seeing, the answer would reveal itself. And Sarah Chen, who'd spent 3 years being invisible, was finally ready to be seen. The restaurant James chose was called Elevate. Appropriate name, Sarah thought, for a first date that was elevating their relationship from professional proximity to personal possibility. Top floor of a downtown high-rise, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, soft lighting, intimate tables. The kind of place you take someone you want to impress. James had made reservations for 7 p.m. They arrived separately, Sarah's insistence. Condition 1, keep work and personal separate. Arriving together would invite office gossip. James was already there when Sarah walked in at 7:03. He stood when he saw her, full gentleman's stand. She'd never seen him do that for anyone. She'd changed after work. Navy dress, simple but elegant, her favorite. James stared, actually stared. You look beautiful. First compliment he'd ever given her appearance. In 3 years, thank you. You clean up well yourself. He did. Dark suit, no tie, casual for James. First time she'd seen him without a tie outside the office. They sat, awkward silence. 3 years of proximity, and they had no idea how to talk to each other outside professional context. James broke first. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Date. It's been years, and even when I did, I was terrible at it. Architecture is my language. Small talk is not. Sarah smiled despite herself. Then don't make small talk. Talk about architecture. You want to hear about architecture on a first date? I want to hear about what you're passionate about. That's always more interesting than weather and politics. James relaxed slightly. Okay, architecture. The Thompson building. You know the project I've been working on? The redesign, city landmark, high stakes. You've been stressed about the presentation. He looked surprised. You knew that? James, I've watched you stress about that project for 6 months. You do this thing where you adjust your tie 3 times in a row when you're anxious about something. You've been adjusting your tie constantly for weeks. You notice that? I notice everything about you. I have for 3 years. The admission hung between them. James leaned forward. Tell me what you've noticed. Why? Because I want to know what I looked like through your eyes. Because I've been blind and you've been watching, and I want to understand what you saw. Sarah hesitated. This felt vulnerable, exposing, but he'd asked, and vulnerability was the point of this, wasn't it? You hum, she said quietly, when a project is going well, barely audible, but you do. Usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I think those are your design days based on your calendar patterns. I hum? Yes. You also run your hand through your hair when you're frustrated. Always the left hand, back to front. You've been doing it more the last month. I assumed the Thompson project was hitting obstacles. It was. Structural engineering issues. How did you? I pay attention. You take your coffee black with 2 sugars. You prefer morning meetings to afternoon ones. You're more focused before lunch. You're left-handed but shake with your right. You've never mentioned why. You leave later on Wednesdays. I think that's when you have phone calls with the Boston office based on the time zone difference. James was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. What? Sarah asked. You know me better than anyone, and I didn't even know you were paying attention. That's what happens when you care about someone. You notice. How long? James asked quietly. How long have you cared? Year 1, maybe 6 months in. There was this moment, you probably don't remember. You were looking at the lobby architecture models, just staring, lost in thought. And I wondered what you were seeing that I couldn't. What world you were building in your head. I wanted to know, wanted to understand how your mind worked. That's when it started. and I never saw it. No, you never looked. I'm looking now, I know. I just don't know if you're looking at me or at the idea of me. At who I actually am or who you think I might be. Then let me know you, really know you. Sarah, tell me everything. Where you grew up, what you dream about, why you took this job, what you want from life. All of it. So she did. For the first time, Sarah talked about herself to James Mitchell. Told him about growing up in Seattle, about her parents, her mother still there, her father passed 2 years ago. Told him about studying communications because she liked connecting people and ideas. Told him about the marketing firm where she'd worked before Mitchell and Harding. How she'd left because the culture was toxic. How she'd taken the receptionist job as a temporary position and stayed because the firm felt stable. Told him about her book club, 5 women who'd been meeting monthly for 4 years. About salsa dancing on Wednesday nights. About wanting to travel more. About her dream of eventually moving into project coordination or management. She talked for 20 minutes. James listened to every word, asked questions, real questions, not perfunctory small talk. What's your favorite book from book club? Do you prefer leading or following in salsa? Where do you want to travel first? What kind of projects interest you most? He was genuinely curious, genuinely engaged. This was what Sarah had wanted for 3 years, someone asking about her, caring about the answers. And it was overwhelming, in the best way. Their food arrived. They ate. Conversation flowed easier now. James talked about his own history, MIT, the intensity of architecture school. His first job at a firm that worked him 80 hours a week. The pride of seeing his first building completed. The loneliness of dedicating everything to work and nothing to relationships. I told myself I didn't need personal connection, James said. That work was enough. That buildings would be my legacy and that was sufficient. But Tuesday, when you weren't there, I realized how empty that was, how I'd built this perfect professional life and had no one in it, no one who knew me, no one I knew, just isolation disguised as ambition. And that realization came from one day of me being gone? It came from the panic of that day. From walking past your empty desk and feeling like the ground had disappeared. From spending 16 hours unable to work because all I could think about was where you were and if you were coming back. From realizing that I'd structured my entire life around routines that included you and I'd never consciously acknowledged how central you were to those routines. That's about routine, though, about habit disrupted. How do I know it's about me specifically? James set down his fork, looked at her directly. Because I've traveled before. Been away from the office for days, sometimes weeks, and it never felt like Tuesday felt. Because other staff members have been out, and I've never panicked. Because I spent Tuesday night looking at your Instagram like a stalker, learning about your life, wanting to know everything. That's not about routine. That's about you. Sarah's heart was racing. What did you think? When you looked at my Instagram, I thought you were beautiful. I thought you looked happy dancing. I thought I wanted to be there, watching you laugh with your friends, being part of your world instead of separate from it. I thought I'd wasted 3 years not getting to know you. And I thought I'd do anything to make up for that if you gave me the chance. The waiter appeared, asked about dessert. Neither of them had touched, their entrees in. 10 minutes. Too absorbed in conversation. They declined dessert, asked for the check. Outside the restaurant, standing on the street corner, there was the question of what came next. End the date here? Safe, appropriate, or extend it, risk more vulnerability. I don't want tonight to end, James said quietly. Neither do I. Walk with me, just around the block. Keep talking? Yes. They walked, through downtown, past shops and offices and other Friday night diners. The conversation shifted from history to present, from what they'd been to what they wanted. Sarah talked about her dream of coordinating projects, of using her organizational skills in meaningful ways, of building spaces that mattered. James talked about the Thompson building, about legacy, about wanting to create architecture that served communities, not just showcase design. Their dreams aligned in unexpected ways. You should work on my projects, James said. Coordinate them. You'd be incredible at it. I can't work for you and date you. We agreed. Then work with me, not for me. Partner. Equal. James, I'm a receptionist. You're a senior partner. That's not equal. Skills are equal. Title is arbitrary. Sarah, you've been coordinating everything at the firm for years. You just haven't had the title or credit. Change that. Let me help you change that. That's condition 4. No promises you can't keep. Not a promise, an offer. Talk to HR, explore internal transfer, project coordination. I'll recommend you, but the decision to pursue it is yours. Sarah stopped walking, looked at him. You'd do that? I'd do anything to keep you at the firm in a role you actually want, anything that keeps you close but respects your autonomy. Why? Because Tuesday taught me that I need you in my life, and I'd rather have you as a colleague in a role you love than as a receptionist you're settling for, even if that means seeing you less. The selflessness of that struck her. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. They'd walked a full circle. Back to the restaurant, back to where their cars were parked. The date had to end. Sarah didn't want it to. Neither did James. Can I see you again? James asked. Tomorrow, or is that too soon? Tomorrow's too soon. I need time to process tonight, to make sure this is real and not just adrenaline. When? Next Friday. Same time. Different restaurant. Your choice again. You're making me wait a week? I'm making you prove this isn't just initial excitement. If you still want to know me next Friday, if you still care after a week of normal routine, then I'll believe this is real. James smiled. Challenge accepted. But Sarah, yes, I'm still going to walk past your desk every morning at 8:47. I'm still going to say good morning. I'm still going to notice you. Every day. Because that's not about dates or romance. That's about finally paying attention to someone who's been there all along. Okay, walk past my desk. But James, actually see me when you do. I will. I promise I will show you, every day. That I see you. He moved closer, not touching, just close. Can I kiss you goodnight? Sarah's breath caught. Yes. James kissed her, gentle, brief. Perfect. When they broke apart, Sarah felt dizzy. Good night, Sarah Chen. Good night, James Mitchell. They went to their separate cars. Sarah drove home in a daze. First date with James Mitchell, the man she'd loved from a distance for 3 years. The man who'd finally seen her. It felt like a dream. But the warmth of his kiss on her lips felt real. The memory of his attention felt real. The possibility of more felt real. Sarah went home and called Maya. How was it? Perfect. Terrifying. Real. You're staying? I'm staying. And Maya? I think this might actually work. Of course it will work. He's been in love with you for 3 years. He just didn't know it. How can you be sure? Because you don't panic over losing someone who doesn't matter. You panic over losing someone essential. Sarah, you've been essential to him for 3 years. He just needed your absence to realize it. Now he knows. And he's not letting go. Sarah hoped Maya was right. Hoped that one empty desk could transform into something lasting. Hoped that Friday night was the beginning, not an outlier. She'd find out over the coming weeks. Find out if James's attention was sustainable, if his seeing her was permanent or temporary, if 3 years of walking past could become a lifetime of walking together. Friday night ended with hope, real, tangible hope. And for Sarah Chen, who'd spent 3 years hoping without evidence, hope with evidence felt like everything. The week between the first date and the second was a test. Sarah had designed it that way deliberately. One perfect date could be performance, adrenaline, novelty. 1 week of consistent behavior would prove whether James's revelation was real. Monday morning, November 20th. Sarah arrived at 8:30, settled at her desk, prepared for the day. 8:47 a.m. James stepped off the elevator, made immediate eye contact, walked to her desk, actually stopped this time. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning, James. How was your weekend? Actual question about her personal life, in front of other arriving employees. Good, quiet, caught up on reading. You worked on the Thompson presentation. But I also tried that hiking trail you mentioned, the one from your Instagram. You were right, great views. He'd gone hiking, to a place she'd recommended in passing during dinner. Showing, not telling. Did you make it to the summit? I did. Thought about you the whole way up. About how you must feel up there, free, away from everything. Other employees were noticing this conversation, the length of it, the personal nature. Sarah felt exposed, but also validated. James was choosing to be public about this, about seeing her. I should let you get to work, Sarah said. Right, work, that thing I'm supposed to be doing. See you at lunch? Lunch? I thought maybe we could eat together, in the break room. Nothing fancy, just together, if you want. Public lunch, in front of colleagues. Definitely no longer hiding this. Okay, noon? Perfect. He walked to his office. Sarah sat at her desk, aware of curious looks from other staff. This was going to start rumors. She didn't care. Noon came. Sarah went to the break room, brought her usual salad. James was already there, with takeout from the Thai place down the street. "I got you, Pad CW. You mentioned it was your favorite during dinner. Hope that's okay." He'd remembered. One comment from Friday night and he'd remembered. They ate together, talked, about work, about the weekend, about nothing important. But the act itself was important. James Mitchell having lunch with the receptionist. Visibly, deliberately, colleagues noticed, whispered, speculated. Sarah heard the gossip by 2 p.m. "Did you see James and Sarah at lunch? Are they dating?" Finally. I always thought he looked at her differently. That last one surprised Sarah. Had James looked at her differently? Had others noticed something he hadn't let himself acknowledge? Tuesday, James stopped by her desk 3 times. Morning greeting. Coffee break. Brought her favorite latte without being asked. End of day. "Have a good evening, Sarah." Wednesday, Sarah had salsa class. James asked about it in the morning. She mentioned it was tonight. He said, "Have fun. Text me after. Let me know you got home safe." She did. After class, sweaty and happy, she texted, "Home safe. Great class. New routine." His response, "I'd love to see you dance sometime, if you'd be comfortable with that." Showing interest in her life, her hobbies, her world beyond work. Thursday, James brought lunch again. This time asked Sarah to eat in his office, more private. They talked for an hour. About the Thompson project, about her interest in coordination, about possibilities. "I talked to HR, James said. "There's a project coordinator position opening in January. Internal candidates get priority. You should apply." James, "I don't want special treatment because You won't get special treatment. You'll get fair consideration for a role you're qualified for. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. But Sarah, you're good at this. At organizing chaos. At seeing the big picture. You should be doing more than answering phones." "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." Friday morning, the day of their second date. Sarah arrived at work with nervous excitement. Had the week proved anything? Had James's attention sustained 8:47 a.m.? James stepped off the elevator, walked straight to her desk, set down a coffee, her usual, and a small wrapped package. "What's this?" Sarah asked. "Open it." She did. Inside, a book. First edition of her favorite novel. The one she'd mentioned during dinner a week ago. "James, this is too much? I know. But I saw it and thought of you, and I wanted you to have something that mattered. Something that showed I was paying attention." Sarah felt tears threatening. 1 week. He'd sustained attention for 1 week, remembered details, acted on them. "Thank you. You're welcome. Still on for tonight, 7 p.m.? "Yes. Where are we going?" "Somewhere you'll like. Trust me, I'm starting to." "Good. That's a start." He went to his office. Sarah sat with the book and the coffee and the accumulated evidence of 1 week of sustained attention. Maya was right. This wasn't panic, wasn't novelty. This was James Mitchell genuinely trying, genuinely seeing her, and it was working. Sarah sent the final decline to the design firm. Official, permanent. She was staying. Not just at the firm, but in this, with James, with the possibility they were building. 1 week down, many more to come. But the foundation was there, built not on promises but on consistent action, on showing, not telling, on walking past her desk every morning and actually seeing her. Friday night's second date would either confirm or complicate everything. Sarah was ready for either, ready to keep building or ready to protect herself if needed, but hoping, genuinely hoping, that this was real. That 3 years of walking past her desk was transforming into a lifetime of walking together. The evidence suggested it was. Now she just needed time to trust it. Time to believe that James Mitchell's panic over her absence was evolving into genuine partnership. Time would tell. And Sarah Chen, who'd spent 3 years being patient, had learned patience well. She could wait, as long as James kept showing up, kept seeing her, kept proving that one empty desk had changed everything. So far he was, and that was enough. 3 months can change everything, or prove that some things are meant to last. By February, James and Sarah had established a new routine. Not the old routine of walking past without seeing. A new one, built on intention and presence. Every morning, 8:47 a.m., James stopped at Sarah's desk. Actual conversation. "How are you? How was your evening?" Real questions, real answers. Twice a week, lunch together. sometimes in his office, sometimes out. Always talking. About work, about life, about everything. Weekends, dates, real dates, museums, concerts, hiking, cooking dinner together at his apartment or hers. Wednesday evenings, James started attending Sarah's salsa class. He was terrible, endearingly terrible. But he showed up, every week, because it mattered to her. The office had stopped gossiping, accepted that James and Sarah were together. Adjusted. In January, Sarah had applied for the project coordinator position, had gone through the full interview process, no special treatment, competed with external candidates, had gotten the job on merit. Started February 1st, new desk, new responsibilities, new challenges. She loved it. And James, true to his word, maintained professional boundaries at work while supporting her personally outside of it. They were building something, slowly, carefully, but building. 3 months of dates had revealed compatibility Sarah had hoped for but wasn't sure they'd actually have. James was intense, driven, sometimes too focused on work, but he was also thoughtful, attentive, willing to be vulnerable in ways that surprised her. Sarah was organized, detail-oriented, sometimes too cautious, but she was also adventurous, brought spontaneity to James's structured life, made him laugh in ways he hadn't in years. They balanced each other, challenged each other, made each other better, not perfect. They fought. About time management, James still overworked sometimes. About communication, Sarah sometimes assumed he knew what she was feeling instead of saying it. But they fought healthy, talked it through, didn't let resentment build. They were learning each other, really learning, and what they were learning was promising. Valentine's Day arrived, February 14th, their first major relationship holiday. James had been planning for weeks. Sarah knew because she recognized the tells. The 3 times tie adjustment, the distracted humming on Tuesdays. He was nervous about getting it right. That evening he picked her up at 7 p.m. "Where are we going? You'll see." He drove them to the office building, Mitchell and Harding. "We're going to work? That's your Valentine's plan? Trust me." They took the elevator to the 7th floor. The office was empty, dark except for one area, reception, Sarah's old desk. James had set up a table there. Candles, flowers, takeout from Marcello's, the restaurant from their first date. "What is this?" Sarah asked. "This is where it started, where I walked past you 1,095 times without seeing you, where you sat for 3 years being invisible while I was blind. I wanted to acknowledge that, to honor the place where everything changed." Sarah felt tears welling. "James, wait, there's more." He pulled out a folder. Thick, official looking. "What's that?" "Your personnel file." "I asked HR for a copy. Want to know what I found?" "What?" "Performance reviews, 5 years of them. Every single one says exceptional, detail-oriented. Makes the firm run smoothly, invaluable asset. Every year for 5 years. And you know what I never did? Never thanked you properly. Never acknowledged how much you were carrying. Never saw how invaluable you actually were." He set down the folder, picked up an envelope. "This is for you." Sarah opened it. Inside, a check. Substantial. Back pay substantial. "What is this?" 3 years of bonuses you should have gotten and didn't. Because I didn't advocate for you. Didn't make sure you were compensated fairly. Didn't see your value. This doesn't make up for that. But it's a start. James, this is too much. It's what you earned, what you should have been paid all along. Please take it." Sarah stared at the check, then at James. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm trying to show you, not tell you, show you, that I see you, that I value you, that the 3 years I was blind don't define us, that I'm building something better. We're building something better." Sarah set down the check, walked around the table, stood in front of James. "You're succeeding. At showing me, at seeing me. James, these 3 months have been everything I hoped for and more. Yeah, you've shown up. Every day, you've been present, attentive, real. And I'm starting to trust that this isn't panic, that this is genuine, that you actually see me. I do see you. Finally, completely. Sarah, I love you." The words hung in the air, first time he'd said them. Sarah's breath caught. "You love me? I love you. I've probably loved you longer than 3 months, but was too stupid to realize it. But I know it now, and I needed to say it. Here, where I was blind for so long, where you deserved to be seen and I failed to see you. I love you, Sarah Chen. Sarah kissed him. Deep, emotional, certain. When they broke apart, she whispered, I love you too. I've loved you for 3 years. I just didn't think you'd ever love me back. I did, I do, I will, for as long as you let me. They sat at the table, in front of Sarah's old desk, where 1,095 walk-bys had happened without real seeing, ate dinner together, talked about the future, about where this was going, what they were building. Move in with me, James said. Sarah nearly dropped her fork. What? Move in with me? My apartment. Or we find a new place together. I don't care. I just want to wake up next to you every morning. I want you to be the first thing I see. Not at 8:47 when I get to work, but actually first thing, when I open my eyes. I want you there. James, we've only been officially together 3 months. I know. Too soon. Tell me it's too soon and I'll wait. But Sarah, I wasted 3 years not acting on what I felt. I don't want to waste more time being cautious when I know what I want. I want you, in my space, in my life. Fully, completely. Sarah thought about it. 3 months was fast, conventionally. But they'd known each other 3 years, worked together, orbited each other. The 3 months of dating were just the formalization of something that had been building much longer. Yes, yes, yes. I'll move in with you. But James, I'm bringing all my stuff. My books, my ridiculous throw pillows, my need to control the kitchen organization. All of it. I want all of it. Every ridiculous pillow and organizational preference. I want your whole life integrated with mine. They kissed again, sitting at a table in an empty office, in front of the desk where everything had started, where James had walked past 1,095 times, where Sarah had sat for 3 years hoping, where one empty desk had changed everything. It felt right, full circle. Beginning and continuation combined. 3 months had proven what? Tuesday's panic had revealed James Mitchell and Sarah Chen belonged together. Had probably always belonged together. Just needed the disruption of absence to see it. Now they were building presence, deliberate, chosen, real, not perfect, never perfect, but genuine. And for Sarah, who'd spent 3 years being invisible, being genuinely seen, was everything. For James, who'd spent 3 years being blind, seeing Sarah was a revelation he'd never stop being grateful for. Valentine's Day ended with a promise. Not spoken, just understood. They were in this. Together. Building something lasting. One walked-past desk had become a foundation. 1 day of absence had become a catalyst. And 3 months of intentional presence had become the beginning of forever. They left the office together, hand in hand. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to keep building. Ready to transform 3 years of walking past into a lifetime of walking together. 1 year after the Tuesday that changed everything, Sarah and James stood in the same office building. November 14th had become their anniversary. Not of dating, that was still Friday the 17th, but of awakening, of seeing. Of the day James Mitchell panicked and Sarah Chen became visible. They celebrated it every year, privately, meaningfully. This year, year 1 of many to come, they'd return to where it started. The office was closed. Weekend, just the 2 of them. They stood at reception, Sarah's old desk, now occupied by someone new, someone efficient, someone James said good morning to every day, because he'd learned people matter. Everyone deserves to be seen. 1 year, Sarah said quietly. 1 year since I fell apart because you weren't here. Best panic attack of your life? Absolutely, changed everything. They'd moved in together 6 months ago. James's apartment had become theirs. Filled with Sarah's books and James's architecture models and a life built together. Sarah's project coordination work was thriving. She'd successfully managed 3 major projects. Had a reputation now, not as the receptionist, as the coordinator who made impossible projects possible. James's Thompson building had been completed. Won awards. He'd credited Sarah in his acceptance speech for teaching me to see what's in front of me. They were partners, at work, in life. Equal. I got you something, James said. We agreed no gifts, just time together. This isn't a gift, it's a question. He pulled out a small box. Sarah's heart stopped. James, Sarah Chen. 1 year ago you weren't at your desk, and I panicked, fell apart. Realized I'd been walking past the most important person in my life without seeing her. You gave me a chance. Let me prove I could actually see you. I've spent 1 year showing, not telling. Proving through actions that you matter, that I see you, that I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life continuing to prove that. Marry me." He opened the box. A ring, simple, elegant, perfect. "Marry me, Sarah. Let me walk past your desk every morning for the rest of our lives. Except this time actually seeing you, actually appreciating you, actually loving you the way you've always deserved." Sarah was crying. Yes, obviously yes. He slid the ring on her finger. Perfect fit. They kissed, in front of the desk where everything had changed, where 1,095 walk-bys had led to one panic-stricken realization, where 3 years of invisibility had transformed into 1 year of being seen, where Sarah Chen had waited and James Mitchell had finally woken up. "I love you," Sarah whispered. "I love you too. And I promise I will show you, every day, that you're seen, valued, loved. No promises you can't keep, remember? This one I can keep. This one I will keep. For the rest of our lives." They left the building together, engaged, committed, building a future. 1 year ago, Sarah had taken a day off, one day, and that one day had detonated everything, had forced James to see what he'd been missing, had given Sarah the courage to stay when leaving seemed safer, had transformed routine into recognition, had proven that sometimes people need to experience absence to appreciate presence. 1 year later, they were proof that panic can become purpose, that blindness can become seeing, that walking past someone 1,000 times can become walking beside them forever. Sarah Chen had been invisible for 3 years. Now she was essential, seen, loved. Not because James had always known, but because he'd learned, because he'd been willing to acknowledge his blindness and commit to seeing. Because one empty desk had taught him the most important lesson of his life: the people you walk past every day might be the people you can't live without. You just have to pay attention. James Mitchell had learned to pay attention, and Sarah Chen, who'd waited 3 years to be noticed, had been patient enough to let him learn. Now they were building something neither of them could have predicted: a marriage, a partnership, a life, built on the foundation of 1,095 walk-bys, built on 1 day of panic, built on 1 year of intentional seeing, and it was just the beginning. Because seeing someone isn't a one-time event, it's a daily choice, a commitment to continue noticing, appreciating, loving. James and Sarah had made that choice, would keep making it. Every morning, every evening, every moment, for the rest of their lives. 1 desk, 1 absence, 1 panic, changed everything, and proved that sometimes the most important people in our lives are the ones we're walking past. We just have to stop. Look, see, before it's too late. James Mitchell almost learned that lesson too late, but he learned it. And that made all the difference. 5 years after the Tuesday that changed everything, James and Sarah Mitchell returned to Mitchell and Harding Architecture. Not as partners at the firm. They'd started their own practice 3 years ago. Mitchell and Chen Design. Equal partnership, equal vision. They returned for an event. The firm was unveiling a redesigned lobby, and they'd been invited as the designers. Irony wasn't lost on either of them. The lobby where James had walked past Sarah's desk 1,095 times, where Sarah had sat for 3 years hoping to be seen, where everything had started and nearly ended. Now they were redesigning it, together. The unveiling was scheduled for 6 p.m. Clients, staff, architecture press all invited. James and Sarah arrived an hour early, wanted time alone in the space before the crowd arrived. They stood in the lobby, looking at their work. Modern, open, beautiful. But the centerpiece was deliberate, a sculpture, integrated into the reception desk design. Abstract, but recognizable if you knew the story. It depicted presence through absence. Solid form interrupted by empty space. The negative space as important as the positive. A tribute to the day absence taught presence's value. "We did good work," Sarah said quietly. "We did, but you know what I'm most proud of?" "What?" "That we built this together. Equal partners. Not boss and receptionist, not senior partner and staff. Equals. The way it should have been from the beginning." Sarah squeezed his hand. 5 years of marriage, 8 years of knowing each other, 3 years of their own firm. They'd built something extraordinary, professionally and personally, not without challenges. They'd fought, about work-life balance, about taking risks with the business, about starting a family. That conversation was ongoing. But they'd built it together, through honest communication, through choosing each other daily, through remembering that they'd almost missed this entirely. "Tell me the story again," Sarah said. "Which story?" "The Tuesday story. How you felt." James smiled. They'd told this story dozens of times. To friends, at their wedding, to clients who asked how they met. But Sarah never tired. of hearing it from him. Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. I walked off the elevator at 8:47 a.m., turned right toward my office, and something was wrong. Took me 3 steps to register what? Your desk was empty, you weren't there, and I felt like the ground had disappeared. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Spent the entire day falling apart because the one constant in my life, you, was suddenly gone. And what did you realize? That I'd been in love with you for years and was too blind and stupid and scared to acknowledge it. That routine had hidden truth. That I'd walked past the most important person in my life 1,095 times without really seeing her, and that if I didn't fix that immediately, I'd lose something irreplaceable. And did you fix it? I tried, still trying, every day, still showing you that I see you. You're doing a good job. Yeah? Yeah. 5 years, James. You've sustained it for 5 years. I believe you now. I believe you see me. Good. Because I do. I see you, Sarah Mitchell, every day, every moment. You're the first thing I look for in every room. The person I think about constantly. The woman I choose every single day. And I'll keep choosing. Forever. Sarah kissed him. In the lobby where it all started. I love you. I love you too. The crowd began arriving. Press, clients, former colleagues from Mitchell and Harding. Everyone wanted to know about the sculpture, about the design concept. James and Sarah explained it together, finishing each other's sentences, a practice team. The negative space is as important as the positive. What's absent teaches us to value what's present. This sculpture is about that lesson, about paying attention, about seeing the people and things around us before they're gone. The reception desk operator, a young woman mid-20s, asked a question. Is there a story behind this concept? It feels personal. James and Sarah looked at each other, smiled. There is, Sarah said. I used to work at this firm, sat at reception for 3 years. She gestured to James, walked past my desk every single day, never really saw me, until one day I wasn't there, and he panicked. The operator's eyes widened. And that's when I finally paid attention, James finished. When I realized what I'd been walking past. When I learned the most important lesson of my life, the people you walk past every day might be the people you can't live without. You just have to see them. The operator looked at Sarah, then at the sculpture, then back at Sarah. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. Sarah laughed. It's the most panic-stricken thing that happened to him. But yes, it ended up being romantic. The event continued. Press coverage, photos, success. But James and Sarah kept returning to the sculpture, to the physical representation of the day that changed everything. Later that night, driving home to their house, they'd bought a place a year ago, needed more space for the firm and for future possibilities. Sarah was quiet. What are you thinking? James asked. I'm thinking about that receptionist, the one who asked about the sculpture. What about her? She sits at a desk. People walk past her every day. I wonder if anyone sees her, really sees her. Probably not. People are blind until they're forced to see. We should change that, at our firm. We should make seeing people standard practice. How do you propose we do that? I don't know yet. But James, we learned this lesson the hard way. Almost lost everything because of blindness. We should teach it better. Make sure others don't make the same mistake. James thought about this. You're right, we should. What if we made it part of our firm culture? Regular check-ins, making sure every employee feels seen, valued, not just as function but as people. Exactly. We know what invisibility feels like. We know what panic over absence feels like. Let's make sure no one at our firm experiences either. Mitchell and Chen Design, where we see you. Sarah laughed. That's terrible marketing copy, but accurate, but terrible. They arrived home, entered the house they'd built together, metaphorically and literally. They'd designed the renovations themselves, a home filled with James's architecture books and Sarah's novels, with models and art, with evidence of a life shared. Can I tell you something? Sarah asked. Anything. I'm glad you were blind for 3 years. James looked surprised. Really? Why? Because it made the seeing mean more. If you'd noticed me immediately, it might have been simple, easy. We might have taken each other for granted. But the journey, the 3 years of waiting, the panic, the intentional rebuilding, it made us solid. We had to choose each other deliberately. Had to work for this. That makes it stronger. You're saying my failure to see you was actually a good thing? I'm saying the timing was perfect, even though it didn't feel that way at the time. We weren't ready for each other earlier. You needed to be established. I needed to be confident. The 3 years of proximity built foundation even if we didn't know it, and the panic taught you the lesson you needed to learn, to pay attention, to value presence, to see people before they're gone. James pulled her close. You're generous. Reframing my blindness as beneficial timing. I'm realistic. We're happy now. We built something beautiful. The path to get here was complicated, but it got us here. That's what matters. They stood in their living room. Married 5 years. Together 8. Partners in every sense. Do you still walk past my desk every morning? Sarah teased. You don't have a desk. We have offices side by side. But do you walk past, check in, see me, every single day, first thing, before anything else? I walk into your office. Say good morning. Actually look at you. Actually see you. And I'll keep doing that until we're too old to walk. And then I'll hobble past, or wheelchair past, or whatever mobility we have. But I'll still see you first, still choose you first, still make you the priority. That's the promise I made, the one I keep. Sarah kissed him. Good. Because I'm holding you to that. I'm counting on it. They spent the evening together, talking about the event, about future projects, about maybe expanding their team, about the ongoing family conversation. Were they ready? Still uncertain, but discussing it, together, as equals. The life they'd built wasn't perfect. Work was demanding. Schedules were tight. Stress was frequent. But they faced it together, as partners, as people who'd learned what absence felt like and chose presence instead. 5 years after the Tuesday that changed everything, they were proof that panic can become purpose, that blindness can become vision, that walking past someone 1,000 times can become building a life together. Sarah Chen Mitchell had been invisible for 3 years. Now she was a partner, a wife, an architect in her own right, seen, valued, loved. James Mitchell had been blind for 3 years. Now he was a husband, a partner, a man who'd learned the most important lesson: pay attention, see people, value presence before it becomes absence. They'd learned it the hard way, but they'd learned it completely. And 5 years later, they were still building on that foundation, still choosing each other, still walking together instead of walking past. One desk, one absence, one panic had become a marriage, a business, a life, and they were just getting started. 10 years after James walked past Sarah's desk for the 1095th time, they sat in their home office, not working, just sitting, reflecting. It had become a tradition. Every November 14th, the anniversary of the Tuesday, they'd take the evening off. No work, no obligations. Just time to remember how they almost didn't happen. Sarah was 40 now. James 43. Married for 9 years. Parents for 2. Their daughter Emma was asleep upstairs, named after the moment everything changed. Emma, a variation of empty, the state of Sarah's desk that started it all. James had insisted. Sarah had laughed, but agreed their daughter would carry the reminder. Absence can teach presence's value. Tell me what you remember most about that day, Sarah said. They did this every year. Compared memories. How time and distance changed perspective. I remember panic, James said. Pure, irrational panic. I remember walking past your desk and feeling like I'd forgotten something essential, like leaving the house without keys or wallet. But worse, more primal. And I remember the entire day being unable to focus because my brain kept screaming, something's wrong, something's missing, fix it. And now? How do you understand that feeling now? Now I understand it was recognition. My subconscious knew what my conscious mind refused to acknowledge. You were essential, had been for years. My brain had cataloged you, categorized you as critical infrastructure, and when you were gone, alarms went off. I just didn't understand the alarms were saying, you love her, you idiot. Sarah laughed, that same genuine laugh from the photo on her desk 10 years ago. What do you remember? James asked. I remember fear. Taking that day off was terrifying, because part of me wondered, what if I'm not actually essential? What if no one notices? What if I've been building this whole fantasy that I matter and I don't? Coming back Wednesday and finding out you'd been fine would have destroyed me. I was not fine. I know that now. But I didn't know then. Sarah at reception could have been replaced by anyone competent. Sarah as a person? I didn't know if I mattered as a person to you. You did. You always did. I just didn't know I knew. Exactly. And that's the terrifying part. How many people are walking around right now blind to something their subconscious already knows? How many people are walking past their person every single day and not seeing them? A lot, probably. We were lucky. We got our disruption. We woke up. Not everyone does. Do you think we would have figured it out eventually, without the Tuesday? James considered this honest question. Deserved honest answer. I don't know, maybe. Maybe one day I would have looked up and actually seen you. Maybe it would have happened gradually, naturally. Or maybe I would have walked past you for 30 years and retired without ever knowing. I'd like to think I would have figured it out, but I can't guarantee it. The Tuesday forced the realization. Without it, uncertain. That's what scares me. How many people never get their Tuesday, never get disrupted, live their whole lives not knowing what they're walking past? A lot. But Sarah, we can't control other people's awareness. We can only control ours. And we choose to pay attention, to see each other, to value presence. That's our responsibility. Staying aware. Are you still aware? After 10 years? What do you mean? I mean, has routine dulled it again? Do you still actually see me when you walk into my office every morning? Or has it become habit again? Vulnerable question. Important question, James thought carefully. Sometimes it threatens to become habit, he admitted. Sometimes I catch myself going through motions. But then I remember. I remember the panic, the fear, the almost losing you, and I choose to see, deliberately, consciously. You're wearing the blue sweater today, the one you bought in Portland last summer. You're tired. Emma had a rough night. You've been worried about the Civic Center project. I can tell by the way you've been organizing your desk more than usual. You had salsa class tonight but skipped it to stay home with Emma. You're drinking tea instead of coffee, which means you're stressed. How's that for seeing? Sarah's eyes were damp. That's very good. I practice every day. Intentional noticing. Because I never want to go back to blindness. Never want to take you for granted. Never want to walk past you without seeing you. I practice too. You're wearing the watch I got you for our anniversary. You've been anxious about the hospital design. You've reorganized your desk 3 times this week. You want to take Emma to the Children's Museum this weekend. You're reading that biography of Frank Lloyd Wright. There's a bookmark on page 347. You're happy. Actually happy. Despite the stress and the work and the chaos. I can see it in your eyes. James pulled her close. We're good at this. At seeing each other. We had good motivation. Fear is a powerful teacher. So is love. They sat together, in comfortable silence. Partnership that didn't need constant words. Do you think Emma will understand one day? Sarah asked. Why we celebrate November 14th every year. Why we tell her the story about the empty desk. I think she'll understand that her parents almost missed each other. That they learned to pay attention. That they built something beautiful from panic and patience. And maybe she'll learn the lesson earlier than we did. Maybe she'll see people from the beginning instead of needing to almost lose them first. I hope so. I hope we're teaching her better than we knew ourselves. We are. Sarah, look at what we've built, not just us, but Mitchell and Chen, the work, the impact, the intentional culture of seeing people. We've taken the lesson from that Tuesday and made it foundational. That matters. Sarah nodded. Their firm had grown. 12 employees now. All treated like people, not functions. All seen, valued, appreciated. They'd built something good, professionally and personally. All because of one empty desk. One day of panic, one choice to try. Can I tell you something I've never told you? Sarah asked. Always. When I took that Tuesday off, I almost didn't come back at all. The design firm had offered me the job. I could have just not returned, called Monday, given notice from a distance, avoided the whole confrontation, started fresh somewhere else. Why didn't you? Honestly? I wanted to know. I needed to know if anyone would notice, if you would notice. I told myself it was about confirming my invisibility before leaving. But really, I was hoping for the opposite. Hoping someone would care. Hoping you would care. And when you did, when you acted so strange Wednesday, I had evidence. Not proof, but evidence. And evidence was enough to risk staying. I'm glad you did. Risk staying. Sarah, I almost lost you so many times. When you were invisible, when I was blind, when you had that other job offer, when I was too slow to act, we almost didn't happen. And that thought is still terrifying. But we did happen, despite all the almost losses. We chose each other, built this, made it work. We did, and we will. Keep making it work. Keep choosing each other, keep paying attention. Deal. They sat there until midnight, until November 14th became November 15th, until the anniversary of panic became the anniversary of choice. 10 years, 10 Novembers, 10 celebrations of the day absence taught presence's value, and many more to come. Because James and Sarah Mitchell had learned the most important lesson: the people you walk past every day might be the people you can't live without. You just have to stop, look, see, before it's too late. They'd almost learned it too late, but they'd learned, and that made all the difference. This is the story of James Mitchell and Sarah Chen. He walked past her desk 1,095 times. The day she wasn't there, he panicked. That panic changed everything, transformed routine into recognition, blindness into vision, walking past into walking together. 10 years later, they were proof that panic can become purpose, that absence can teach appreciation, that people you take for granted might be the people you can't live without. The lesson is simple: pay attention. See the people around you. Value presence before it becomes absence. Don't wait for panic to teach you what daily gratitude should have shown all along. James and Sarah learned this the hard way. But they learned it completely. And they spent 10 years, and would spend many more, building a life on that foundation. A life where people are seen, where presence is valued, where walking past becomes impossible because you've learned to stop, to look, to see, before it's too late. Sometimes we don't know what we have until it's gone. Sometimes one empty desk is enough to teach that lesson. Sometimes panic is the best teacher we'll ever have. James and Sarah were proof. 1,095 walk-bys, one day of absence, one moment of panic. Changed everything and built something beautiful. The end. But also the beginning. Because learning to see people isn't a destination. It's a practice, a daily choice, a commitment to continued awareness. James and Sarah chose that commitment, every day, for 10 years, and counting. May we all be so wise. May we all learn to see before we panic. May we all recognize the people we're walking past, before one day they're gone, and we're left with the devastating knowledge of what we missed. James and Sarah got lucky. They got their disruption in time. They woke up before it was too late. Not everyone does. So pay attention. See the people around you. Value what you have, before absence teaches you what presence should have shown all along. That's the lesson. That's the story. That's what one empty desk, 1,095 walk-bys, and one day of panic taught two people who became partners, lovers, spouses, parents, and proof that blindness can become vision, if you're willing to see. The end.